Hey guys, Occasional Gamer here. Welcome back to the second part of our website creation. For those of you that didn't watch the first part, in brief, we are going to be creating a very basic, unsecure website. It's going to be nothing fancy. It's going to be extremely simple. And the end goal is to essentially be able to then hack into this website using Kali Linux. It's all going to be in a virtual environment later on. For those of you that haven't used Kali before, that will be a pretty interesting video when we get to it. I'm kind of bored of testing proper big name sites because I'm not able to record them. Don't think I'm necessarily breaking any laws if I do so, if I don't show any private information, but I just thought to myself, well, I may as well make my own website, make my own database, and then later on we'll actually be able to hack into that and just basically make a little playground for ourselves. It is all on a local network and it's in HTML, PHP, and in this video we're going to be implementing some SQL as well. Again, for those of you that missed the first video, it's certainly not going to be a high-tech website that you're going to be able to sell to customers. This is just simply the fundamental basics. I spoke a little bit about HTML and PHP, all the tags, what they meant. We delved into CSS, which is our cascading style sheet, which again looks very basic, is very simple to learn. So you, of course, can create a foundation website off of these videos, but I'm certainly not doing it for educational purposes. It just isn't good enough. I'm not speaking in depth as much as I should be if I want it to go down that route, whatever, where you're from. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on creating our database. So essentially, this is going to be what we're going to be hacking later on. Our database is going to include some very basic, pointless information, usernames, passwords, all that kind of thing. But it's of course stuff that hackers actually want to get into as well. So we're going to be creating. It's all going to be dummy data, so none of it's actually going to be none of it's actually going to be valuable. So as you can see, I'm in PHPMyAdmin. For those of you that have no idea what this is, we're running PHP, and PHP is a server-side scripting language. So to run that, we need a server, and the server I'm using is something called XAMPP, X-A-M-P-P. And with that, you also get something called PHPMyAdmin, which enables you to create databases using MySQL. So later on, we'll be able to manipulate our database and link it with our website. So to get started, we click on new and we create our database name. So I'm going to call this, our website is called my website. So my website DB, create a table. So we're going to have create a table of users. Columns, we're going to want user ID, user name, user password, user email, and let's add 5 for now. We'll see how we go. So again, there are hundreds of database tutorials out there. There are hundreds of website tutorials out there, which is why I'm not going into depth too much. I'd rather, if I were to do something like that, actually focus on teaching rather than playing around. This is purely for my amusement. But I thought I'd share it on YouTube for the sake of it, doing a little bit something different from my usual gaming videos. So every single database table needs a primary key, and a primary key is basically a unique identifier for a certain data type. So for example, user ID. So when we sign up somebody to the actual website, they'll be given a user ID. So for example, it could be randomly generated if you wanted it to. As are just going to go up. They're basically, if we go over here, we're going to have default We're going to have a length. An int is an integer, so that's a number, user ID, number. And all we need to do, it can't be null. Null means, yep, it can be empty. It can't be that. The index, it has to be primary. Go, go, go. And then AI isn't robots that'll kill you. It's auto implement. Increment. Nearly got it right. Auto increment. So, for example, first user signs up, they'll get given 1. Second user, 2. Third, 3, etc., etc. User ID. Then we're going to go with user name. So these, of course, can be called whatever you want them to be called. These are just kind of for database administrators to obviously know what they're doing. If you call that cheese, no one's going to know what it is. So we're going to have a length of 15. Again, unless you're a multi-million pound company with millions and millions of users, this is where your length will matter, because you've got database volume to monitor. Obviously, the more it takes up more memory, blah, blah, blah. With us, that number doesn't really matter. All it means is that when they're entering a username, only 15 characters will be able to be entered. We don't want that auto increment, and it can't be null again. So we're going to go with username, user password, and let's actually have their first name, their last name, and we should username, user password, user first name, user last name. And I want to add another column, add one more column, and we're going to have a user email. So this is going to be our user database, so user password. So you could Google what type of field you should store a password in. We're going to be hacking into these things, so you do not want a plain text or varchar, which is a mix of numbers and letters. You don't want to store them in plain text. So for example, if I were to leave that as varchar, you let's let them have 15. If we were to store that in varchar and they got hacked, the hacker would be able to see immediately that the user password is plain text. So that could be password 1. So that isn't something that you actually want. You could Google this and all day long get people arguing about what kind of data type it should be. Essentially, you're going to want them hashed. And again, this comes to the hacking part of the series later on, where we'll actually be able to hack into that and say, okay, we can quite clearly see that that's a plain text password. So now we'll actually alter that and implement some code, and I might talk about how we can actually prevent users from seeing it, prevent hackers from seeing it as plain text. You get a series of these, but there's no real safe way amongst these to actually store passwords. There needs to be some kind of advertisement happening on the website code for that to happen. So rambling on. Username, we're going to use varchar, and the user first name, and that could be, say, 10. User last name, put 20. It's a varchar again, and user email varchar, and we'll give them 50. So that is how we create a database table. So once we click save, oh, I should say as well, we can actually, so SQL, which is something I mentioned in the last video, SQL is a scripting language, and it's essentially the language of databases. So we're creating a table, create table, and we're creating the table my website database, and we're creating the table users, and then this is simply it. It's pretty much plain English. User ID, which is here, we want it as an int. We can't have it null, and we want it to auto increment. Varchar, blah, blah, blah. And somewhere in here, usually at the bottom, we have primary key, and it'll tell us our user ID. So it's not like you need to know SQL to actually play around with the PHPMyAdmin. There we go. So we now have users. Okay, user ID, username, user password, user first name, user last name. So now we can actually go to the structure of the database, ignore all these errors. Sorry, don't need to go to structure. We go to the insert. So we leave the user ID as blank, and let's, for example, put username, occasional gamer. User password, I'm going to share this with you guys. Password 1324. Nah, that's confusing. 234. User first name, occasional. Last name, gamer. Yeah, that's good enough, right? So we're leaving that blank because if you remember, we told it to auto increment. So if we click go, one row inserted. So now that is our first ever entry into our user database. So again, going to basics, for those of you that have never toyed with databases before or really understand how they work, when you sign up to, for example, Facebook, they would have a much more sophisticated database system. But essentially, when you create a username, it'll store in something like this: password, first name, last name, etc. We now have our website database for users. The next one we're going to create is items. So similar to last time, item ID, we want it an int. We'll have 3 and we'll not allow it to be null. We'll create a primary index and we'll auto increment it. Now we're going to have to say item name. Whoops. Item password. Not password. Item price. Item genre. Item stock. Varchar. So we're going to have length of value on that is 3. The genre on that can be 15. The price can be 5, 6. And the name can be 20. So again, without me rambling on, we created that pretty quickly. If you know what you're going to have inside your database, it's pretty quick to set up. So now you can see my website database, items and users. So perfect. Everything so far, so good. So now we've created our database, we actually need to link this database with our website. And to do that, you need something known as a connection string. So we go back over to our website and we can actually create a new subfolder, which I like to call scripts. So everything in this website is stuff that's going to happen back end. So style sheet, okay, you could argue you could put that in there if you really wanted to. But we're going to simply call this connection.php. And our connection.php, as I say, is going to enable us to connect to our website. So we need our database, sorry. So we need to actually establish some kind of connection. So put simply, these are our PHP tags that we spoke about in the first video. We're going to need this on all of our pages, but if we go to our second page first, and at the very top, before absolutely anything, we say PHP so we'll talk about sessions later on. Sessions start, and then we're going to say include connection. Oh, sorry, it's going to be is it going to be scripts connection.php. So when we actually load, so here we go, we can just quickly copy and paste this onto our home page as well. Obviously, you're not going to need it on your style sheet. So now we're going to be connecting our database using the connection.php page that we just created. So within here, we basically need to establish some variables. And a variable is like a box or a container. And then the information within that box or container can be called upon at any point. So for example, if we call this variable server name, and the server name, these actually need to be correct. These can't be made up. So for example, the server we're running from is our local host. We're going to also create a variable, which is our DB name, which is was it my website DB? My website DB, which is clearly there. So that is our actual database name. And then what we need to do is look at our username. So what are we called? And then we define a password. So again, this is all information regarding the server and the database itself. So our username is root. So this will be the same to you if you are doing the exact same thing I'm doing via phpMyAdmin. Password, the database doesn't have a password. So then we connect so then we're going to create a connection variable that says, so everything we type after equals can be called upon just by simply typing con. So MySQL, so a few years ago that was the normal MySQL, but then it got depreciated and very vulnerable. So now it's MySQL I connect, and then we simply call upon our server name, our username, passwords. So again, even though the password's empty, it still needs to be defined, and then our database name. And then we say, if there is no connection, if there is no connection, then we basically want to be told about it. So we would put in, please echo and tell us that something's wrong. So this can be whatever you want. So sorry, can't connect. Okay. Else. So else essentially means, so if there is no connection, then say sorry, can't connect. Else echo, well done, you connected. Whoops. So when we actually try this now, we are going to see one or the other. So this is the one we want to see. This is the one we might see if something here is incorrect, but it should be okay. So to then implement this connection page on the other pages, just like we did we're going to say include scripts connection PHP. And now we give it a go. So second page, I'm going to refresh this, and somewhere on here we'll say well done or nah. There you go. Well done. You're connected. Okay, so brilliant. So we know now that our database is actually connected to our database, our website. To take away this writing, which we don't want, we're going to simply put 2 dashes, and that turns that to a comment. So even though this is actually going to run every time we try, we can't see comments. Brilliant. Right, so we have created our database. We have now created a connection file to connect to our website. I'm going to leave it here for this part. It's a very short part. But it means next time we can actually start displaying our database information on here. We'll start generating a bit of our information straight away. So for example, we'll start putting users in, we'll start putting items in, we'll just randomly generate it all. And that'll be it. Hopefully in several parts time, you will be able to follow me create a Kali Linux virtualization setup. And like I've said several times throughout, this is certainly not an educational series. You can, of course, learn things from it. For example, those of you that have never done PHP before in your life will have hopefully learned something. But that's it for this part, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel if you've enjoyed. And I shall see you next time.